could turn to snow on higher hills. Showers also for more northern and eastern coastlines across England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Feeling chilly, a low of -3. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Holly Jones.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. LBC's Election Call with Eddie Mair.
Tonight, it's Dominic Grieve QC. He was a Conservative, now independent. He was Attorney General between 2010 and 2014 under David Cameron. You might want to ask him about Brexit, a second referendum. Or Dominic Grieve's comments last month on LBC that Boris Johnson's behaving like a dictator when he compared his chief advisor Dominic Cummings to a scuttling rat. But the choice is yours. It's your election call. You can text 84850, tweet at LBC and pick up the phone 0345 6060 973. We're live on LBC, of course, and you can watch the whole of Election Call on the LBC website, lbc.co.uk. You can watch us too on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and you can see us if you stand in front of a mirror and chant LBC 3 times. Your election call to Dominic Grieve, 0345 6060 973. Very welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Probably fitter for 10 days of campaigning.
And only 4 weeks to go. Simon is first in Orpington. Simon, you're through to Dominic Grieve. What's your question?
Yeah, hello, gents. Dominic, my question for you is you voted in favour of Article 50, which says we'd leave with a deal or without a deal. So I just wondered, at what point did you change your mind and decide you'd go back on that, and why?
I voted to trigger Article 50 because I recognise, firstly, the result of the 2016 referendum, and secondly, because we couldn't even start negotiations without triggering Article 50. There could be no negotiations to leave. And I was quite prepared, even though I thought that the decision in 2016 was a mistake, I was quite prepared to support the Prime Minister Theresa May taking us out of the EU on the terms which she indicated in her Lancaster House speech and subsequently in the Conservative Party manifesto she was going to try to negotiate. I changed my mind when I realised that the terms that she had negotiated were in fact so unsatisfactory for our future, despite her best efforts, and she acted in good faith, I make that quite clear. And it was then that I said, if we are going to leave on such terms, which are so radically different to what was being discussed in 2016, I think we ought to go back and ask people if that's what they really want.
Simon?
Well, that's interesting because the Lancaster House speech, a lot of Brexiteers were actually in favour of that. And when it got to the deal, then they said, well, this seems like Brino. So which exact parts, Dominic, was it about the deal that you felt contradicted the Lancaster House?
Lancaster House and the manifesto said that we wanted a deep and special relationship with the EU, which gave us frictionless access into markets for our manufactured goods. And I think this was particularly important, that at the time we left to go into transition, we had settled what the future relationship would be thereafter. That appears in the Conservative Party's 2017 manifesto. Now, we've never got anywhere near that. The criticism that was made of Theresa May's deal was that it left us too locked into the EU without any say in the way in which the EU operated, and moreover that we were going into transition without any certainty as to what the future relationship would be. That was quite a dramatic change. Then, of course, she lost office, having attempted to get it through. And I should make clear, I did consider voting for it and told her that if there came a point where the ERG changed their position, I would consider backing it just to bring this to an end, even though I was deeply unhappy with it. But she wasn't able to get it through because it was rejected at both ends of the spectrum. And then we got Boris Johnson, who's come in, who started by saying we were going to leave with no deal at all, which is when I joined up with others to prevent that happening because I regard it as a catastrophic outcome, really disastrous for the country, and is now, in fact, trying to sell a deal, which I have to say, my judgment on it is that it is a deal which is going to destroy the unity of the United Kingdom. That's the first thing. And the second thing which it's going to do is I don't actually believe it's going to lead to a future FTA at all. So, in fact, what we're doing is postponing by 12 months a crash out.
Simon, you've asked questions trying to get to Dominic Grieve's state of mind, what he was thinking, why he changed his mind. What do you think of the answers?
Well, it's interesting because he stood on the Conservative manifesto at that point saying that we'd still leave without a deal. he seemed to think that Boris didn't want to get a deal, and therefore he worked to take it off the table, even though it's very clear Boris was working for a deal and has now brought a deal back. So still a bit confused on that one, Eddie.
Let me try to explain the point. Firstly, in the manifesto, it's right that there was included the words, no deal is better than a bad deal. I indicated at the time that I entirely rejected that. Indeed, I don't know why it featured in the manifesto. It clearly was contradictory to the other parts of the manifesto. I'm afraid I think it was just a piece of what some people describe as puff. It was just words. And I made quite clear at the time that I disagreed profoundly with that because the consequences would be so bad. Now, when it comes to Boris
Simon,
Johnson's deal...
But you were still elected under it, Dominic.
Well, I stand as a Conservative candidate and I indicate to my electorate what I subscribe to. Worth pointing out, actually, that the manifesto itself came out about 4 days after my nomination papers went in. But I stand by what I said at the time. But the fact is we have ended up with a deeply unsatisfactory series of deals. And that's why I think we should go back to the public. Bear in mind, I'm not saying that I would vote in Parliament to revoke Article 50 off my own bat. I wouldn't. But I do think that when you get to an outcome which is so significantly different from what was actually being discussed at the time in 2016, I think we should go back and ask people if that's what they really want. If they do, we could leave within 48 hours thereafter, either on Boris Johnson's deal or indeed no deal at all. What I wasn't prepared to do as an MP is to completely abandon my own judgment and conscience and sign off something that I think was uniquely damaging to our country.
Simon, you have the last word.
Okay, well, I don't have a huge amount of respect for people who defy a core principle of their manifesto. So I'm looking forward to the people making their judgment in the election.
Simon, thank you. David is in Enfield. David, you're through to Dominic Grieve.
Good evening, Eddie. Good
Hi.
evening, Dominic.
Good evening.
Dominic, in the year preceding his selection as the new Tory leader, note I say selection, not election, Boris Johnson personally pocketed over £700,000 from various newspaper columns, speeches to banks and asset managers and other organisations. This was in addition to his taxpayer-funded salary of £79,000. So I have three questions for you briefly. Do you think it's appropriate for sitting MPs to accept such huge personal payments from vested interests? Secondly, what do these newspapers and companies expect in return? And thirdly, as an attorney, do you think such actions are a breach of the government's 7 principles of public life, specifically integrity?
I certainly think that members of Parliament should not put themselves in a position where they can be seen to be beholden to anybody. I think it's really important, and that applies to their financial affairs as much as to anything else. Of course, they have to make their own judgment about that. Clearly, if you're making a career in journalism, or at parallel with your career as an MP, that raises firstly the question as to how much time you spend doing it. But in fairness, quite a few of my colleagues do some journalism and write articles, and that's completely compatible, it seems to me, with what they're doing in Parliament. And indeed have some side interests, which I also think are completely compatible with Parliament. But each member of Parliament has to make their own judgment as to whether the extent to which they are involved with an outside activity is going to have a clear bearing on their own judgment and independence in the House of Commons.
What's your judgment, David?
I totally disagree with that because it's quite obvious. I mean, for example, Boris Johnson was paid while he was an MP £250,000 a year by the reclusive billionaire Barclay brothers who own the Daily Telegraph. And if you look at the coverage of Johnson by the Daily Telegraph, it's been effectively a conservative political manifesto for the last 12 months. So, I mean, we need to know, why is he doing this? Or why are the Barclay brothers allowing him to do this?
You can draw your own conclusions. And if I may say so, I don't think we're actually in disagreement on this particular point. I've just expressed myself perhaps in slightly more guarded terms than you have.
Well, don't be guarded. What do you think?
Well, I personally would not do such a thing. And I think that the Barclay brothers undoubtedly have an agenda. Indeed, the Daily Telegraph has an agenda. So any member of Parliament who is writing articles for a national newspaper, which becomes an important source of their income, calls into question their independence of judgment, and also calls into question whether in fact they're simply, and the accusation can perfectly properly be made, they're simply following the line of the people who are also their paymasters. Now, I can't make a judgment as to whether that is the case or not, but that you should feel that, I don't have the smallest criticism of, and indeed it's perfectly understandable that you might do so.
But isn't it transparent? I mean, people know he writes for The Telegraph. People can see The Telegraph's editorial line. David is very suspicious of it, but it's not as if this is happening in secret.
Absolutely. And that's precisely why I'm not going to issue some outright condemnation. But I think any MP who has sources of external income which may have an influence or be seen to have an influence on the way they behave in the House of Commons has to face up to that. And if should you ever have Boris Johnson in this studio, it's a perfectly legitimate question to ask him about.
We will ask him. We do ask him, and we will ask him again. For now, thank you. This is LBC's Election Call. What do you have to say to Dominic Grieve? What's your question for him? 0345 6060 973. Holly Jones has the news at 6:15.
Boris Johnson says Jeremy Corbyn's suggestion on LBC that it may have been possible to arrest ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is naive to the point of being dangerous. The Communication Workers Union has called a High Court injunction banning potential postal strikes in the run-up to Christmas an utter outrage. The first public hearing is taking place in a process which could lead to a vote on Donald Trump's removal from power. LBC weather: rain over southern England and Wales could turn to snow on higher hills. Showers also for more northern and eastern coastlines, a low of -3.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. It's very slow on the M23 northbound because of an accident between junction 9 for Gatwick Airport and the M25. One lane stays closed. On the M25 clockwise, there are queues from junction 13 for Staines to junction 17 for Maple Cross because of an accident. It's very slow on the M20 westbound because of an accident between junction 4 for Leybourne and junction 3 at the M26. There are queues in Chessington. The A243 Leatherhead Road is closed in both directions because of an accident near Chessington North Station. The A21 Seven Oaks bypass northbound, that's closed between the Seven Oaks turn-off on the M25 because of an accident, so there are long delays. And on the underground, there's no service on the Hammersmith and City Line eastbound from Edgware Road to Barking, and severe delays on the Metropolitan Circle and on the Central Line eastbound.
This is LBC.
Children and chilled. That's like sirens and snoozes. The two just don't sit well together. But with Churchill Insurance, they do. Because if your car was ever in any kind of knock, Churchill will replace your child's seat, no problem. Oh, yes. So when it comes to your kids, you can just chill. Churchill. Comprehensive cover required. Proof of ownership needed for seats £250 or over. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
This is LBC.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are, or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Decorate the halls with buy one, get one half price on all coloured emulsion. Homebase. Feels good to be home. Includes paint mixing. Terms at homebase.co.uk.
The seven dwarves were in a bit of a pickle. With the mines closing down, their finances were somewhat fickle. They looked to downsize their home fast, so Snow White could make her debts a thing of the past.
Boys, the cottage is looking well rough.
So they spoke to the friendly team at Property Rescue, who buy properties in any condition and can offer a guaranteed sale in as little as 2 days, hassle-free. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to sold.
Hi, I'm back. I just set a personal best on my park run. Feels great.
That's lovely, Mike. I think you've earned the right to put all the bins out.
Hey?
With Vitality Life Insurance, you get properly rewarded when you're active. In fact, you could save over £730 every year in discounts and rewards from our partners. Join over 1 million customers. Just search Vitality Life. Vitality. Positively different. Annual savings available with certain plans and are dependent on members' usage of rewards available. Terms and conditions apply.
Make their Christmas wishes come true. Whether they want to jet off on Barbie's dream plane, run with the storm in Fortnite, or glide along on My Lovely Llama. At littlewoods.com, you'll find all the toys they love, all with inclusive delivery and free returns. Own Christmas. Shop now at littlewoods.com.
LBC's The Election Call with Eddie Mair. Call 0345 6060 973.
Dominic Grieve, QC, here for the hour, former Conservative, now Independent, and now talking to Gail from Bristol. Welcome, Gail. What's your question for Dominic Grieve?
Good evening. My call is regarding the loan charge. Over 50,000 people and their families are suffering each and every day because of the loan charge that's going back 20 years retrospectively. I can't understand why, even when there are 7 confirmed suicides and risk of further suicides, it isn't at least being suspended. I know only too well the impact this is having, as I am the daughter of a loan charge suicide victim. Dominic, why on earth has the loan charge not yet been suspended?
First of all, I'm really sorry to hear this. And I'm very concerned about the loan charge. I've been a member of the loan charge APPG for some time when I was in the Commons.
That's the all-party parliamentary
parliamentary group. And have made direct representations to Sir Amias Morse, who's carrying out the review. I think my concern has particularly centred on the fact that the government's argument was that people who engaged in loans were doing it with the full knowledge of what was happening and had been advised that there were risks, whereas in fact the evidence to my mind is overwhelming that although such people may exist, indeed there may be many of them, there are a very large number of people who were actually put in a position where they had very little option but to take loans because their employment was being terminated and being replaced by this system of consultancy with loan payments. And I think that the approach that's been taken by HMRC has been harsh. And I regret very much that Parliament has allowed this to happen. But of course, we are now in a situation where the ministers say, well, this is a rule which is being enforced by an independent HMRC. And HMRC are saying, well, Parliament has given us this rule and this change to enforce. I agree with you. I would like to see the enforcement suspended. I've made numerous representations. I've got lots of people who are subject to the loan charge in my constituency. And they're also being left with enormous difficulties. In respect of should they settle, in which case can they get reasonable settlement terms, or should they try to resist because they think, in fact, they should pursue litigation and the risks involved in that. So it's immensely stressful, and I'm very sorry, deeply distressed to hear about your case. I would like the government to listen on this. I'm hoping that Sir Amias Morse's report will take account of the many representations he's received. I know that he's been listening because I made direct representations to him, and the feedback I got from my caseworker, who also was able to attend a meeting with him, was that he was noting very carefully the different circumstances which arose for different individuals in respect to the loan charge.
Gail, I share Dominic Grieve's comments about your loss, and I certainly don't want to intrude into your grief, but if you want to, do you want to tell us what happened? It's fine if you don't want to talk about it. It must be very upsetting.
No, it's fine. Dad was the most honest person, and he was indestructible, and he became depressed. We found out after he was brave enough to write us a very long letter that he was clearly depressed, and he stated in his letter he was at the end of his tether with the loan charge. It was the waiting. We marked his year anniversary at the weekend, and we still have no answer from HMRC. That's what angers me and makes me, I want to fight to help everyone, but also to HMRC are ignoring our agent. It's so wrong where we can't get closure. I'm now impacted by the loan charge. I deal with his estate and I have to deal with this, and I've had to give up work. And I can't cope because HMRC are now ignoring us. And it's horrible. It really is. It's so cruel.
Yes, it is, and I think you're right that one of the things that has concerned me the most about this is that HMRC seem to have been unresponsive to the human dimension and element to this matter. I'm appalled to hear of your father's case, and I'm so sorry. But all I can do is should I be re-elected, I will be working with fellow MPs to try and get this resolved in a satisfactory way. I continue to be very troubled by it. I've raised it on the floor of the House of Commons. I've raised it with the Minister. And if enough MPs do so, then I think we might succeed in getting some shift. I'm hopeful that Sir Amias Morse, who in my experience is a very humane individual, will have some understanding after the representations he's received about the mental and human suffering that's been caused as a result of the way in which the charge is being applied and the money is being clawed back. It's a very serious issue, and I feel increasingly reflects badly on government, even though government is entitled to take steps to deal with tax avoidance. But it's not been a happy story, and your appalling tale reinforces this for me. And you should, I hope, raise it with your local MP, whoever it is, and I'm sure you may well have done so, but you should make sure that you make your local Member of Parliament aware of what's happened and also aware of the problems you yourself or other members of the family may be having as a result of claims on the estate.
Gail, thank you very much for calling in and articulating that. You are speaking for many people I know. Thanks very much. Are you okay? You're not okay, but you can stay on the line if you want to.
Thank you.
All right. Gail, good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for ringing in.
Take care. Well, as you articulated, many people in that position, and I just want to say, having mentioned the suicide of Gail's dad, worth pointing out that the Samaritans are always there, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. There's a telephone number, 116 123. You can call that free. And they're also on the web at samaritans.org. But should you feel suicidal or depressed, they're always there, 116 123. Now, some text questions. Can you ask Dominic, what does remain look like? We talk about leaving, but what does remain look like? It's not going to be what it is now, says Roy in London.
If we remain, then we will stay in the EU, and we then have to work to get reform within the EU, which undoubtedly is an organisation, international treaty organisation with 28 member states, that by its very nature has some inherent flaws to it. I'm not uncritical of the way the EU operates. I think the EU's made some bad mistakes. The creation of the euro was a bad mistake, and that has in fact skewed the way the EU operates. But you can't just turn the clock back. You've got to weigh up to cost-benefit analysis. My view has always been that the benefits that flow from us from our involvement with the EU very substantially outweigh the drawbacks. But you only have to look at what's been going on around the European continent, at the amount of anger, some of which has been directed against the EU, some of which against politicians, to see that we're living in quite difficult times when trust in institutions is at a very low ebb. And therefore, there's actually a much wider issue for us as politicians than just EU membership that needs to be addressed. We've seen it with the Scottish referendum on independence. We're living in troubled times, probably more troubled than at any time in my life. And I'm very conscious of that. And simply remaining is not a solution to those long-term problems. They need to be addressed in a more fundamental way. I think perhaps human beings on this planet are lacking in confidence about our collective future more today than at any time I've ever experienced. You can see it with Extinction Rebellion. You can see it with anxiety about mass migration. You can see it about environmental problems that we have, and the sense that the security that people seek in their lives is not present in the way they want it. And that is what fuels, firstly, anger, also looking for things that might be changed radically to alter things for the better, hence leaving the EU seen as being somehow a magic solution, which I'm afraid I don't think it is. But equally, the fact that it isn't a magic solution doesn't mean that there aren't aspects of the way the EU works which don't need change.
We're coming up to the 6:30 news, but Mike has a question from Finchley, which is very straightforward. Mike, what is it?
Yeah, good evening to both of you. Thank you for taking my call. Dominic, if you could choose between one Prime Minister or the other, who would you like to see as Prime Minister in the next election? Boris Johnson or Jeremy Corbyn?
I'm not happy with either, which is why I've ended up standing as an independent. In the case of Jeremy Corbyn, I think that the extreme socialist policies he espouses, and indeed his underlying Marxism, would be very, very damaging for the other country, economically and in other ways, if he were ever elected or went anywhere near Downing Street. And should I ever be an independent MP and elected, I absolutely promise I would do nothing to facilitate his arrival there.
So you prefer Boris Johnson?
But I do find Boris Johnson extremely troubling as an individual. I can't escape the fact that my own assessment of him is that he is a politician who I simply cannot trust. He's somebody who is astonishingly elastic with truth.
Is Jeremy Corbyn more trustworthy?
Well, I think Jeremy Corbyn I think Jeremy Corbyn's policies are ghastly and therefore would be massively damaging. But I have to say, do I find Jeremy Corbyn as a private individual somebody who I think is sincere in beliefs which I happen to disagree with? Yes, I do. Whereas I have to say that I find Boris Johnson an individual who I regard as wholly insincere and indeed willing to say almost anything to anybody if he thinks it's going to be his advantage at any given moment. I've never experienced a politician in modern British history who is so elastic with truth and also willing to resort to telling whopping lies against other people if he thinks it suits him. And that really worries me. As a Conservative, as a past Conservative, somebody who's been in a party which has its flaws and imperfections, but I think on the whole, I've always believed that there's an attempt at maintaining integrity. The leader of the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister is now somebody who, in my judgment, has no integrity at all.
Mike, good question. Thank you. What's your question? 0345 6060 973 631. Here's Holly with the news.
Boris Johnson says Jeremy Corbyn's suggestion on LBC that it may have been possible to arrest ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is naive to the point of being dangerous. The Labour leader says Baghdadi being removed from the scene by American forces was a good thing, but wishes there could have been a trial. On the campaign trail, the Prime Minister said a second EU referendum would be madness. Labour's promising more money for the NHS, and the Liberal Democrats say Brexit would stop investment in important areas. Hearings in the inquiry into whether Donald Trump should be impeached have now gone public. The US president is denying claims he withheld help for Ukraine in order to get the country to investigate his political rival Joe Biden. Royal Mail strikes that could have affected Christmas deliveries have been blocked. The High Court has ruled a union ballot had irregularities. LBC weather: rain over southern England and Wales could turn to snow on higher hills. Showers also for more northern and eastern coastlines, a low of -3.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, LBC.
Prime Minister telling us that get Brexit done to unleash Britain's potential. Michael Gove, Senior Conservative and Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. 4 months ago, a gentleman by the name of David Gauke sat round the cabinet table with you. He can't bring himself to vote Conservative. Why should others?
David wants to ensure that we leave the European Union in a way that maximises our prosperity. The best way of doing that is having a majority Conservative government. If we have an hung parliament, then we'll have paralysis.
But he's saying it's no bad thing if traditional Conservatives vote Liberal Democrat. You couldn't have a bigger split, could you?
That's David's view. He's one individual.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7, LBC.
If a bank or financial advisor persuaded you to move your savings into an ISA, unit trust or investment bond and you lost money, you can make a claim for compensation. If unsuccessful, you can then refer it free to the Financial Ombudsman. Now, if the prospect of pursuing a claim feels a little daunting, or you just don't have the time, then you can ask Goodwin Barrett for help. To discover how much you may be owed, text GOOD to 60777. Text GOOD to 60777 now.
Goodwin Barrett. This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Enjoy a day out at Bicester Village with hot chocolate and Christmas waffles from Pierre Marcolini and deliciously fluffy pancakes at Café Wolseley. Open-air shopping with 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. The world's best designers and luxury that lasts for less. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
What matters most to you? Saving money or helping the environment?
With Evergreen Power, you can do both. Insulating your home with soft spray foam insulation will keep the heat in your home this winter like never before, with its air barrier seal. Reducing airborne noise, condensation, damp and mould, your loft will be transformed into a dry, usable space, while cutting your heating bills and carbon footprint, so helping the planet. For a free survey, search Evergreen Power.
The 1304 LNER train, Coach C. Taking aunties with cold hands to nephews with warm cheeks in Edinburgh. Remorseful revellers back to their beds in Leeds. Business mums gliding over the Forth Bridge towards adoring toddlers in Newcastle. And a band heading to London to our group of strangers in a tiny pub. This is us. These are our journeys. This is our LNER.
Based on actual events.
After 9/11, everyone was scared. Scared it might happen again.
Critics are calling the report a 5-star gripping political thriller.
The CIA destroyed tapes of interrogations.
I want to find out what was on the tapes.
A large-scale saga of corruption, justice, and overwhelming relevance. Starring Adam Driver, Annette Bening, and John Hamm.
If we stop now, aren't we a part of the cover-up?
The Report, in cinemas Friday and on Amazon Prime Video November 29th. Certificate 15.
Millions of people are missing out by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB offers interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. Plus, you can stop your friends and family missing out by recommending the Plus account to them. And when they switch, you'll both earn £75. Search online or visit your local branch. Terms and conditions apply.
LBC's Election Call with Eddie Mair.
Dominic Grieve, QC, former Conservative, now Independent. He was very much part of David Cameron's government back in the day. What's your question for him? 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850, tweet at LBC. Here's a text. Eddie, please ask the Honourable Mr Greaves whether in his time as a member of the Tory party he was ever aware of foreign money being used for Tory campaigns.
I don't think I can answer that question. I know that donors to the Conservative Party have to be, and have, I trust, always been, allowable donors. Now, you can be a foreign donor as long as you also have you're on UK electoral register. There are very clear rules about who can make a donation to a political party. And I don't have any evidence that the Conservative Party has been accepting money from foreign governments. Make that absolutely clear. Nothing to suggest that at all. The criticism that has been made and continues to be made is that individual donors to political parties, and it may not just apply to the Conservative Party, often may have their own agendas, and if they have links to foreign states, then that foreign state's agenda may feature as part of it. It's up to political parties to do their proper due diligence about the acceptability of large donations. One of the problems we've got in our current political system is that from politics being mass movements funded by small sums from large numbers of people, we're increasingly in the world of politics where individual large donations are made. And it always raises an issue about propriety. We were talking earlier about a question about politicians earning money on the side from people who may also have an agenda in influencing politics. And one's always got to keep that factor in mind. And each political party must be in a position to answer, and there is transparency for the donations they receive, and whether it's thought that there might be any strings attached, or indeed any ulterior motives that are in fact damaging to the country as a whole.
And Ian in Wareham in Dorset, you've also got a concern about transparency.
Yes, I have. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Dominic.
Good evening.
Yeah, my question really surrounds the withheld dossier, and in particular, I mean, is there any redress if you can prove after the election that could have been, quite influential and important in the election? Is there any legal redress that the public has in terms of holding ministers to account?
I don't think there is any legal redress. The system under the Justice and Security Act is that the committee of which I was chair, the Intelligence and Security Committee, takes evidence, has access to the highest level of classified secrets, and can produce reports which parts of which are usually always classified, but we try to ensure that parts of our reports are also available to the public because they inform people either about the efficiency and effectiveness of our intelligence and security services, whether they're acting properly, and also look at some of the threats that the United Kingdom faces and whether we're taking the right steps to counter them. Our inquiry into Russia was a wide-ranging inquiry. It wasn't just about elections or subversion of the democratic process, but was about the threat that Russia poses to the United Kingdom and its closest partners, and whether we had appropriate measures in place to counter it. Now, I very much regret that this report wasn't published before the election, because there was, in my view, absolutely no valid reason for that not happening. Indeed, we'd worked very hard, and everybody knew we wanted to get it out before the election. I wasn't sure whether the election would be now or in January, but I thought there was likely to be an election, and we worked to get it out, and we got the classification cleared so that we had worked with the intelligence agencies and the National Security Secretariat to ensure that it could be published, and they were completely satisfied. So the sign-off from the Prime Minister, I would normally have expected to be an issue of routine, which would, generally speaking, take place in 10 days. And if there was a problem, I would expect to have heard directly from the Prime Minister as to what the problem was. He's never indicated what it was. A whole series of explanations have been offered since, most of which, I'm afraid, don't stack up. And some of them are utterly bogus.
Does he have something to hide?
I have no idea why he's decided not to publish it, and in a way I can't comment beyond that, because that places me at risk of revealing what the content of the report might be.
Oh, you can tell us.
No, I can't tell you. This committee doesn't leak, and if the report is classified, it remains classified. Now, it's possible, some people are talking about legal challenges. It's been suggested that the report might still be brought out by the government if they change their mind, although it is ultimately our report and not the government's. And that's the other problem. Even when there's a new parliament in December, in the past, it's taken 4, 5, nearly 6 months to set this committee up again. So I'm afraid I think that we may not see this report for a long time. Indeed, I worry, seeing that it may be a completely new committee, that we might never see it at all. And I cannot think of a good reason why, having passed the test of working with the agencies and the National Security Secretariat to make it in publishable form, it should not now be laid before Parliament and published.
I mean, my concern would be in that as a member of Joe Public who's voting, if, as is allegedly the case in the referendum, there was a lot of Russian interference with a lot of bot farms or whatever doing their thing, that has materially influenced the result of the election, I would feel that is a case where, quite frankly, something that should have been in the public domain hasn't been allowed to be in the public domain, and I would feel somehow that we should have redress, and the only redress we seem to do. No, ministers don't seem to be able to be held to account for what could be seen as reckless or negligent actions, and I find that quite difficult, I have to say.
I find it difficult as well. And I want to emphasise this is a cross-party committee that does not act in a partisan fashion. I might add there are also ex-Leavers and ex-Remainers on that committee. It doesn't have an agenda. The agenda is to try to provide information to the public. And as part of the report did touch on the subversion of democratic processes, there was information in this report that I think would be of interest to the public to have a better understanding of what the nature of Russia's threat is. And of course, in the process, that doesn't mean to say that some things that people might be very worried about, reports of this kind are both designed to dispel anxiety if people's anxieties are exaggerated, and also to highlight areas that we should be concerned about if people haven't focused on them. And this is why I can't go any further into this report, much as I would like to.
Do you welcome Hillary Clinton's intervention, or is that another foreign leader trying to interfere in our election?
I think I did welcome it, because what struck me about it was that there's a country, the United States, which has a very big security apparatus, which was highlighting a point that they were surprised that in a country like the UK, which is a parliamentary democracy, and where also we have to guard our secrets, but nevertheless try to ensure enough transparency to inform the public, we were proving ourselves incapable of publishing a report of this kind. The United States and its Senate are pretty robust about this, because they know that accountability to their Senate and their House of Representatives is very important.
Andrew is in Colindale. Andrew, what's your question?
Hi, Eddie. Hi, Dominic. Just a Brexit question, really. So, over the last couple of weeks and months, we finally had a very clear evidence that there were multiple versions of possible Brexit, and that exposes all of the people who shout that they knew exactly what they voted for. And in that context, I just wanted to ask you, Dominic, what do you think there is still a credible and plausible path to a second referendum or not?
Yes, there is, but it is going to be dependent, it seems to me, on whether we have a hung parliament. If there is a hung parliament, I can see that we might end up with a referendum as a sensible way out of our present difficulty. If Boris Johnson gets a working majority, then unless there is a significant rebellion amongst Conservative MPs, and bear in mind that most Conservative MPs who disagree with him have effectively been purged out of the party, then I have little doubt that we will leave on the 31st of January. Having left, we will then have to live with the consequences of leaving, and we won't be able to go back. Certainly not on the terms that we currently enjoy, which are the fruit of Mrs. Thatcher and John Major's rather exceptional diplomacy. So we're about to lose something very significant, and whilst it's possible that our children in 10, 15 years' time might renegotiate our re-entry if that's what people want, it won't be with the advantageous terms that we have now. And in the meantime, we're going to lose the economic benefits and the influence that went with EU membership.
But the pathway that Andrew wants, you say it starts with a hung parliament, which by the way would drive many people to despair.
Well, and I appreciate it might well drive many people to despair, but I have to be realistic. I'm standing as an independent because I'm asking my constituents in my constituency to trust me to try to exercise my judgment in the widest way over Brexit, whether there's an opportunity for a second referendum, or indeed, if there isn't, for the fallout that is going to ensue once we've gone. Because bear in mind that far from being the end of it on the 31st of January, it's the start of a really roller coaster ride for 9 months, with the possibility that we crash out with absolutely no agreement at the end of transition.
What I'm trying to drive at, because I think Andrew wants to know, what is the pathway? So you have a hung parliament, and we know the various procedures that were invoked in recent months. How do you get from hung parliament to referendum?
It might be that if there isn't a majority, I say a hung parliament, if there is no majority in the House of Commons after the next election for us to leave on the 31st of January with Boris Johnson's deal, then either Boris Johnson is going to have to change his position. He might even decide that a referendum were a good idea, in which case I would be cheerfully support him in delivering it. It's possible. I don't know. He'd probably deny it now, but I can see that it's a possibility. The other possibility, and we can't leave it out, is that if indeed it's not a Conservative majority government, we might move again, as was being proposed a month ago, to a government of national unity. But that has many challenges associated with it as well, and I'm the first to acknowledge it. But I happen to think that this issue is so important that I'm just not prepared to let it drop. Because, as I say, the idea that let's just try and get this over and done with, and we all feel so much happier on the 1st of February, is, I think, a mistake, because I don't think it's going to deliver the finality outcome that people want.
LBC's election call to Dominic Grieve, 0345 6060 973. Still time to put your question. It's 6:47 now. Here's Holly with more news.
Jeremy Corbyn has questioned the US-led raid which led to the death of the Islamic State group leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. The US Congress has opened the first public hearing of Donald Trump's impeachment investigation to decide whether he should be removed from office. But Royal Mail has won a High Court injunction to block potential strikes by postal workers in the run-up to Christmas. LBC weather. Rain over southern England and Wales could turn to snow on higher hills. Showers also for more northern and eastern coastlines, a low of -3.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. On the M25 clockwise, a lane's blocked on the QE2 bridge because of an accident, so there are queues from junction 34 Lakeside. Clockwise on the M25, there are also queues from junction 13 for Staines round to junction 17 for Maple Cross because of an accident. Anti-clockwise on the M25, it's very slow to the Dartford Tunnel because of an accident between junction 3 for the M20 and junction 2 for the A2. It's very slow on the M20 westbound because of an accident between junction 4 for Leybourne and junction 3, that's the M26. There are delays in Greenwich. The A206 Woolwich Road westbound is blocked at Hatcliffe Street because of an accident. And on the Underground, there's no service on the Hammersmith and City Line eastbound from Edgware Road to Barking, and severe delays on the Circle and Metropolitan lines.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
A spicy cross-question tonight at 8 with former Conservative MP Nick Bowles, former Labour MP Kate Hoey, Crispin Blunt from the Conservatives and Michael Segeloff, left-leaning journalist.
Ian Dale on LBC.
A credit limit of up to £1,500. What do you have to do to get it? Simple. Get online and check if you're eligible for an Ocean credit card in minutes without affecting your credit score. For your Ocean credit card, visit ocean.co.uk now and get all that from Ocean. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One, the exclusive lender. Representative 39.9% APR variable. Borrow and spend responsibly.
Here at LNER, we love giving you more value. And we all love more, don't we? More sleep, more sun, more me time. So we've added our new Azuma trains with more seats and more great value fares. In fact, there are 3,773 more £29 single tickets every week on our Azuma trains between London and Leeds. Brilliant. Book direct to lner.co.uk, launching alongside existing LNER trains.
Make their Christmas wishes come true. Whether they want to jet off on Barbie's dream plane, run with the storm in Fortnite, or glide along on My Lovely Llama. At littlewoods.com, you'll find all the toys they love, all with inclusive delivery and free returns. Own Christmas. Shop now at littlewoods.com.
You're in leakage, you're in leak.
Tenna Men. Pants and pads. Buy online or in shops. Tenna Men. Keep control.
If a bank or financial advisor persuaded you to move your savings into an ISA, unit trust or investment bond and you lost money, you can make a claim for compensation. If unsuccessful, you can then refer it free to the Financial Ombudsman. Now, if the prospect of pursuing a claim feels a little daunting, or you just don't have the time, then you can ask Goodwin Barrett for help. To discover how much you may be owed, text GOOD to 60777. Text GOOD to 60777 now.
Goodwin Barrett.
There's nothing like meeting face-to-face. And there's nothing like Zoom to make that happen. Zoom lets you connect and do business across town or around the world. Zoom ties together all of your communication needs into one easy platform for video conferencing, phone calls, group chat, webinars, and your conference rooms. Connect easily from anywhere, your mobile phone, your laptop, or conference room. Zoom is how business gets done. Get your free account at zoom.com today. Meet happy with Zoom.
You can trust some things to start your day off just right. The patter of rain falling outside. Lovely. The same rain falling inside through a leaking roof. Not so lovely. But you can make the rain go away thanks to trustatrader.com. Simply pop online to find plenty of vetted, reviewed, reliable professionals in an abundance of trades. Like a roofer who's a ray of sunshine.
Hi, I'm back. I just set a personal best on my park run. Feels great.
That's lovely, Mike. I think you've earned the right to put all the bins out.
Hey?
With Vitality Life Insurance, you get properly rewarded when you're active. In fact, you could save over £730 every year in discounts and rewards from our partners. Join over 1 million customers. Just search Vitality Life. Vitality. Positively different. Annual savings available with certain plans and are dependent on members' usage of rewards available. Terms and conditions apply.
LBC's Election Call with Eddie Mair. Text 84855.
We're here Monday to Thursdays, 6 o'clock during this election campaign. Dominic Grieve tonight. Here's Headley in Edgware with a question. Hello, Headley.
Hello, good evening, gentlemen. Dominic, I'm very sad you're not going to be in government in the next Parliament. I'd like to ask you a question about immigration. Are you in favour of uncontrolled immigration or are you in favour of open immigration? We'd really like to know, if you are in favour of controlled immigration, how you would control it.
I am in favour of controlled immigration, even if we remain in the EU. Immigration from the EU is not wholly uncontrolled. People can come in from the EU to work in this country, but they can't come into this country from the EU to beg in the streets, for example. There's no right to come and do that. Ultimately, I think the evidence suggests to me that immigration is quite difficult to control if the economy requires or is available for people to come in and work. We see this at the moment because as the number of people from the EU goes down, so the number of people coming in from outside the EU is rising. So the idea that you can exercise total control without, in fact, damaging your economic base is, I think, an error. Now, there are a number of things I would like to do to see immigration reduced. There are undoubtedly jobs available in this country and people who could do them but don't do them. I think some of our education is failing in preparing people for some of the available jobs. I'd like to see all those things being done. And I certainly don't believe in uncontrolled migration. And I also believe in language tests for those outside coming in from elsewhere in the world. I think you need a sensible process. But what I don't believe is that you can avoid and just put down the barriers and imagine that you're going to keep people out of this country. It's just not going to happen. And if you try to do it, if you really try to do it in its absolute sense, having left the EU, you would find very quickly that many of your public services would simply no longer be viable. I'm always fascinated in my constituency. I go and see people travelling into London in the morning to go and work. But it's always interesting to go and watch the people coming out of London to deliver the services in the constituency. And most of those people are immigrants.
Headley, what do you think of the answer?
I think it's a very good answer, and I respect very much Dominic and what he's had to say.
All right, Headley, thank you. Paul is in Belfast. What do you want to say to Dominic Grieve, Paul?
Hello, Eddie.
Hi.
Hello, Dominic. It's nice to speak to both of you. I have to put my cards on the table. I've always considered myself to be a socialist, but I have to say, having listened to Dominic and also listened to a lot of the stuff that he's been saying over the last year or so, I'm very much impressed. You know, I do think he is a one-nation conservative. And I think there's very little that you can sort of put between a one-nation conservative person and someone who is maybe a centrist on the Labour Party. You know, there's a lot of grey area between the two. So but that's not why I'm phoning. I wanted to ask Dominic what his view is on. I've heard a lot of talk about hung parliaments. What Dominic's view is on proportional representation, because I can't really see a huge difference between a hung parliament and a parliament that works along the lines of something that's based on proportional representation. That's my question.
Okay, Paul, thank you.
And I agree with you. My views have evolved. I have to say that when I started out in politics, I subscribed very much to the first past the post system, but that really is dependent on your having a two-party system, or at most a 2.5-party system. We don't have that anymore. And the consequences, I think, are that people are being deterred from participation in politics in the sense of not coming forward to actually participate locally in politics because they don't think there's any point in doing it. And we are also, and you're right about this, ending up now with hung parliaments where people show a lack of appetite to be able to compromise, whereas actually if we had a PR system, or a system which had a PR element to it, then I think we would end up with a much greater capacity for compromise in Parliament. And my view is that this reform is going to have to come. I've changed my view on it. It's happened progressively. I think I began to think it perhaps more strongly about 3, 4, 5 years ago, and the coalition government that I served in also reinforced this for me. Now, exactly what the best form is, I'm open-minded. I certainly don't believe in pure proportional representation, but I don't think we can go on the way we are, particularly with the current state of politics and substantial tranches of the electorate having a view which is not being represented within Parliament adequately at all.
Paul, thank you for that. Final question goes on Twitter to Tracy. This is a bit of an open goal for you, but the answer should be interesting. Eddie, can you ask Dominic Grieve what he thinks of Nigel Farage?
I don't think I have a huge opinion of Nigel Farage.
Oh, come on.
No, I don't. He's not an individual I know. I disagree fundamentally with his views. I have no judgment on the sincerity of his views or otherwise. He appears to me to be sincere in his opinions, but he has proved to be a hugely disturbing influence in British politics, exercising a large amount of influence and power without any actual responsibility for the outcome. And he continues to do that. And I happen to think that his vision of the United Kingdom's future is one that I see as fundamentally flawed.
Would you
so
like
I
to see
disagree.
him,
I disagree with it.
Would you like to see him withdraw more candidates, more Brexit Party candidates?
I think it's entirely a matter for him. Having just made the point earlier about proportional representation, it's rather odd in one way that having a view which he believes is supported by a substantial tranche of the electorate, he doesn't wish people to have the option of voting for it. But I do also understand that he's engaging in a tactical voting process, which is also completely legitimate. Indeed, other people are seeking to do it as well. It's entirely a matter for him what he chooses to do. I'm not going to comment one way or the other. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't really matter whether I end up with with fighting the Brexit Party or not as a candidate. I will put my point of view, and the electorate will have to decide based on that.
Dominic Grieve, thank you. LBC's election call returns tomorrow at 6. I'll be here from 4. Tom Swarbrick on LBC Tonight from 10. And now, here's Ian Dale.
Eddie, thank you very much. All the latest election news in the news hour, but also at 9. A former Labour MP has said Jeremy Corbyn's recent criticism of IS leader al-Baghdadi's death shows his anti-West. This is after Jeremy Corbyn told LBC Today that the right thing to do would have been to arrest al-Baghdadi as opposed to pursuing him in a US military operation which led to his suicide. Former Labour MP Tom Harris said, "Isn't it significant that when he's asked about al-Baghdadi's death, he immediately blames America and American troops by saying if we're going to preach the rule of law, we must uphold it." Who's right, Jeremy Corbyn or Tom Harris?
On your radio, on Global